All right, welcome to the Krueger Show, everybody. Friday, August the 23rd, 11:16 West Coast, which means, 2:16 East Coast. Chase Sr. in the house from Chat Sports. Niners go tonight against the Raiders in Vegas. The return to Las Vegas after the incredible week we had there. Unfortunately, losing the Super Bowl there, the Niners are back, and they'll take on the Raiders tonight in the third and final preseason game. Of course, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week. Get the brisket chili. Go say to Damon and Mary. Tell them that Larry Krueger sent you. And Betr is this live stream is sponsored by Betr, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krueger Show. Use Betr to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. I'm loving making money thanks to Betr. And everyone who signs up with the code Niners and places a contest enters the contest is automatically entered to win a Brock Purdy jersey in your size. That's right. Download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners to get the first deposit matched up to $250 and to enter into the contest for your very own Brock Purdy jersey. So thanks to Betr for being a proud sponsor of the Krueger Show. All right, Chase Sr. in the house. It's game day tonight. Chase, what do you see? What are you expecting to see or hoping to see tonight in Vegas between Niners and Raiders?
Pretty surreal that the Niners are returning to Las Vegas Allegiant Stadium. Obviously, the last time they were there in February, it ended in an absolute heartbreak. So when the Niners walk into the stadium tonight, which is an incredible stadium, by the way, being able to be there back in February for the Super Bowl was incredible. It is a beautiful and lavish stadium. I wonder what's going to be going through their minds. Are they still going to be thinking about that Super Bowl defeat? Because human nature points to, they'll probably be having some memories recircle back and think about that game and all the opportunities they had to win it. And then as you fast forward to modern day, last week against the Saints, Brock Purdy got the start, and I was excited to see what he was going to be able to do, but with 3/5 of his projected offensive line and with no skill position players, he looked out of sorts. The offense wasn't able to move the ball. San Francisco did nothing in those 3 drives, but now that brings us to tonight, and it is the final dress rehearsal for San Francisco prior to what is going to be a very difficult Week 1 game against the New York Jets. I think it's going to be a very formidable opponent, and the Niners are still without Brandon Aiyuk, hasn't signed that long-term deal, still without Trent Williams, who continues to hold out and incur $50,000 per day fine. So we're going to take a look at this Niners offense and see what they look like without Aiyuk, with some healthy starters on the field, and I'm excited for that. I think they're going to get some extended run. Kyle Shanahan said anywhere from a quarter to maybe a half, depending on how those possessions go. And then you obviously want to see how this defense can do. I thought your son Kev put out a fascinating tweet earlier this week. San Francisco's defense, I know it's the preseason, has been the worst defensive team among all 32 teams in the NFL in the preseason. So they have to get a little bit better and make those improvements. Unfortunately, though, it's going to be going up against Nathan Peterman and a bunch of Raiders backups.
Yeah, and of course, the subplot of tonight is that rosters have to be shaved from 90 to 53 players by Tuesday afternoon. Most teams are going to do this, I would think, tomorrow.
Yeah.
They're not going to wait till Tuesday. Some teams will, but I think most teams are going to get it done post haste. I mean, Saturday, midday Saturday, you'll see a bunch of transactions, and then you'll see, I think, 17 guys go back to the practice squad. So you'll see all kinds of roster machinations. A couple things in this game that I'm looking for. I think this is the Isaac Guerendo show tonight. I mean, we haven't seen Guerendo yet this preseason. They kind of dusted him off. We've seen a lot of Guerendo and Patrick Taylor in practice this week after seeing a lot of Cody Schrader and Jordan Mason in the previous weeks. So I just get the sense. And then, by the way, Shanahan said all the starters are going to go tonight. I think that's what he's done in the last couple of years. He's announced that the starters are going to play. And then like 5 minutes before the anthem, they'll say, hey, the following 7 players or whatever will not be playing. And that will be, 7 of the Niners' more premier players will not be playing tonight. So there'll be a group of players that Shanahan sits out tonight. But I'm looking to see Guerendo. I'm looking to see who's that number 2 quarterback between Dobbs and Allen. I don't think it's going to be Mordecai, but you never know. I'm looking to see, do any of these corners look like they're cut worthy? So which corner are you cutting? Who's the number 2 quarterback? Who's, what's Isaac Guerendo? Who's on the bubble? Does Jacob Cowing continue to look good? So, I mean, that's kind of what I'm looking for tonight. I guess first and foremost, Guerendo. What do you think we're going to see out of Guerendo?
I'm excited to see him, and hopefully the hamstring's able to hold up. He's literally had hamstring issues all throughout his college career, whether it be at Wisconsin or Louisville. That's something that's always held him back. But if you want to talk about a freak athlete at the running back spot, that is Isaac Guerendo, a 4.3 runner at 220 pounds. He didn't start a game in college until the bowl game this past year. So it was a little bit of a risky pick for San Francisco to trade up and take him in that 4th round. But I'm definitely a believer in the player if he's able to stay healthy. We reference a lot these relative athletic scores from MathBomb, where in the pre-draft process, NFL Scouting Combine, these prospects are graded on an athletic scale of 0 to 10, and Isaac Guerendo graded a 9.9. So there's one of the highest grades among all players in the 2024 NFL draft class. He's 6 foot, 221 pounds, 41.5-inch vertical, 4.33 40-yard dash. The track speed is certainly there. And he's that type of one-cut runner where he sees that hole, hits it. And I think Jordan Mason does a really good job of that, identifying where the play is going, see hole, hit hole. But Jordan Mason doesn't have the speed of Isaac Guerendo. So this is an opportunity for him to maybe crack the roster. He literally hasn't done anything all throughout training camp because he got hurt the first training camp practice with that hamstring injury. Is he fighting for a roster spot? Are the Niners going to have a spot for him on the 53? I think the backup running back situation behind Jordan Mason and, of course, Christian McCaffrey is somewhat up in the air. I really don't know how that room is going to shake out. Cody Schrader hasn't had a lot of opportunities because the offensive line play in front of him has been awful. I think he's shown some juice in the return game. I think it's time for San Francisco to move on from Elijah Mitchell. He can't stay on the field. He's way too brittle and always hurt. And so that Niners running back room is certainly pretty interesting going into this preseason finale.
Yeah, no question about it. And Guerendo, it's funny. Some people already say he lacks contact balance and he doesn't really have any real running back instincts and he's going to disappoint. And then you just see him flash the speed and at that size and you're like, wow, this guy can really move at 220 pounds. And I walked into the camp thinking, Cody Schrader's probably going to beat him out. And Cody Schrader's been all right. He's done a lot of good things, but he's kind of reminds you that he's borderline NFL athlete. He's a borderline athlete, and Guerendo's an exemplary athlete. So, to me, this is Guerendo's opportunity tonight to.
I like his pass catching
show
too.
What he's got. Yeah, no, exactly. Guerendo caught a ball yesterday in the flat that it was just an errant pass, and he put one hand on it and drew it in. So, he definitely has got some pass catching ability. He was a wide receiver in high school, so. Maybe that's where that comes from. All right. This video ad or this live stream is sponsored by Betr, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krueger Show. Use Betr to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. And I'm loving using Betr right now to make real money and to bet on some of these games and play some daily fantasy and make some cash. So everyone who signs up with the code Niners, NINERS, and places a entry is automatically entered to win a Brock Purdy jersey in your size. So you're going to tell us what size jersey you wear. We're going to get it for you in your size. You download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners, NINERS, to get the first deposit matched up to $250 and to enter into the contest. All right, let's take a look at what we're going to play with here. We're going to go with, how about Isaac Guerendo? Let's see. Guerendo, do you like more, Chase, or less than 19.5 rushing yards tonight?
I think that's easy to get. I like the more.
Yeah, I like more too. Let's go more there. So we'll go more on Guerendo. Jacob Cowing. Let's go to Jacob Cowing. Cowing is sitting there at 28.5 receiving yards.
He had more than that on one catch last week.
Yeah, I'm going to go more. Let's go more. More for Cowing on that.
I'm always a part of the more club.
Yeah. How about How about Taylor? How about Taylor, the running back? He's got 24.5 receiving
Well, that's
yards.
Trent Taylor.
Oh, that's Trent Taylor. No, that's
Yeah.
not Trent. That's not Patrick Taylor. I don't want Trent Taylor.
No.
Maybe they don't offer Patrick
What's
Taylor.
Nathan Peterman? He's going to get a lot of run tonight.
Yeah, let's see. What does Peterman got? Peterman 83.5 passing yards. You want to go over? More passing yards?
I like
Okay,
more.
We'll
I
go
was
more
talking
on,
to our Raiders host, and he said that it's going to be the Nathan Peterman show.
and then let's go one more here. Sincere McCormick. Let's go Sincere McCormick. He was their leading rusher last week. 24.5 rushing yards. I like that over.
More's only.
More. We're going more on Sincere McCormick, who played at University of Texas San Antonio, blocked for, or he was the guy who blocked for him, Spencer Burford.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. So there's your Sincere McCormick. All right,
UTSA.
we're betting 10. We're betting 10. 4 for 4 pays us 90. So there you go. 4-pick entry to win $90. So once again, download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners, NINERS, to get the first deposit matched up to $250 and to enter into the contest. Everyone who signs up with the code Niners, NINERS, and places an entry is automatically entered into a drawing to win a Brock Purdy 49ers jersey in your size. So it is yet to be purchased. It will be purchased, and we'll get it in your size. So everyone who signs up automatically entered into a drawing for the Brock Purdy jersey. Download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners and get that first deposit matched up to $250 and enter into the contest with a chance to win. Thanks to Betr for being a proud sponsor of the Krueger Show. All right, Brandon Aiyuk to the Commanders. What do you think of that talk? The Aiyuk thing is just there's never a conclusion.
Nope.
And it just keeps going and going. Mike Silver, the Niners beat writer from the Chronicle, or one of the Niners, or I should say not the Niners beat writer, one of the columnists for the Chronicle, made a KMBR appearance on Thursday, said that everything is still on the table, including all the trades you've heard about, and that includes potentially a trade with the Washington Commanders. The Commanders made a trade yesterday. You reported on it. I watched your video.
Yep.
With the Philadelphia Eagles. And in that trade, they traded Jahan Dotson, their former mid-first round pick, 16th overall, to the Eagles in a trade that on the surface makes very little sense. I mean, one, why would you trade within the division? Two, it just seemed like, okay, so they traded Dotson and a 5th and got a 3rd and 2 7ths.
Correct.
So then the Kev was saying to me this morning that there's speculation out that trade may have had a direct connection to Aiyuk and the 49ers, that the Niners reached out to the Commanders and asked for Terry McLaurin, didn't want Jahan Dotson, wanted, instead of if they couldn't get McLaurin, they wanted a first-round pick. Supposedly the 3rd round pick that the Commanders just got from the Eagles might be going to the 49ers as part of a package for Brandon Aiyuk. Do you believe that to be the case? Do you think Aiyuk's going to wind up in Washington? What do you think the return is going to look like, if it is indeed a Washington?
Right after the
Commanders
Jahan Dotson trade, which was a rare interdivision trade from the Commanders to the Eagles, I was on this right away. I know that you did a video on it as well. A lot of people are reaching out to me, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and they're asking, is this a domino and the first of dominoes that are set to fall, leading to Brandon Aiyuk to get traded to the Washington Commanders? And it's interesting for a couple of reasons, right? I think the Commanders have reemerged. And why is that? Well, Brandon Aiyuk wants to play for 2 teams in the National Football League outside of the San Francisco 49ers. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we've been talking about Pittsburgh since April on my show, the 49ers Report, here on the Krueger Show, and the Washington Commanders. And there are a lot of connections and a lot of tea leaves that you can kind of connect here. So the Commanders trade Jahan Dotson to Philadelphia. Now is Washington back in the running in the Brandon Aiyuk sweepstakes, given that they have a need at the wide receiver spot. What was interesting about Dotson is that through 2 years, 11 touchdowns, numbers weren't great for the 16th overall pick. The Commanders are giving up on him very early, and he had really fallen down the depth chart. The Commanders have Terry McLaurin, Olamide Zaccheaus, Diami Brown, Jamison Crowder, all ahead of him. And then they signed Martavis Bryant, which made Jahan Dotson a little bit expendable. And coming out of Penn State, he was a player who had very sure and natural hands, a 4.4 runner, but he led the Commanders in drops and drop percentage last year. And I think Washington was just looking to move off of him. But is that the only reason why? Are they looking to stack up draft capital, get back a third, a couple of sevenths, and then maybe they can package that third in addition to some other picks, maybe a player in exchange for Aiyuk? Aiyuk played at Arizona State with Jaden Daniels. He said on the Pivot podcast that if he weren't to play for the Niners, he'd like to play alongside Jaden Daniels, who he's very close with. When I was at the NFL Scouting Combine, we asked him, Daniels, what player or players have you really leaned on, knowing that you're going to be one of the top picks in the draft going into the combine and all of these draft visits? And he said, I talked to Brandon Aiyuk basically every single day. And when Aiyuk went on the Pivot podcast, I thought you made a good point. It's kind of disrespectful to Brock Purdy for Aiyuk to say, I'd love to play with Jaden Daniels. Well, how about the quarterback who helped make you an all-pro last year, which has coincided with your numbers exploding over the last year and a half? Brock Purdy, without him, you're not putting up the numbers that you are. So there's the Jaden Daniels connection, but also the former Niners assistant general manager, Adam Peters, who came to San Francisco with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan back in 2017, is now running football ops for the Commanders under their new ownership, Josh Harris, who's also the owner of the 76ers and the New Jersey Devils, because the fraud Dan Snyder is out of there. And Adam Peters has a lot of familiarity with Brandon Aiyuk. And then lastly, Washington has $37.2 million in cap space this year. And then next year, when that contract could really start to set in for Aiyuk, they have $72.2 million. And what has been the team building strategy for a lot of teams in the modern NFL? Get a quarterback on the rookie contract. You exercise that fifth-year option. That quarterback, if you draft him in the first round, is under team control for 5 years, which opens up a lot of cap space for you to build up your football team, get that young quarterback weapons, get his confidence going early. That then leads to positive play, and you try to go all in that time frame of that quarterback being on his rookie contract. And that's the situation with the Commanders. So I think Washington has reemerged a little bit. And we are led to having this conversation because it is August 23rd, and Brandon Aiyuk has not signed that contract extension with San Francisco. Mike Garafolo reporting that they've agreed to a lot of the key elements. Ari Mirov on Thursday saying the Niners and Aiyuk have never been so close, but a deal still not has happened. And then Mike Silver goes on the radio yesterday, and he starts talking about this Aiyuk situation, how the Commanders are back in the running, and how everything is on the table. Him getting traded to Pittsburgh wouldn't rule out Washington. If he gets dealt to Pittsburgh or Washington at this point, it's not going to surprise me in what has been seemingly a never-ending saga between the Niners and Aiyuk.
I mean, there's a lot of talk out of D.C. that Diami Brown had been outplaying Jahan Dotson, and that was what may have led to the Commanders, sending Dotson to the Eagles. But, it's so funny that, that they make the trade in the division.
Yep.
And, a lot of people are like, oh, you're not going to trade Aiyuk to the Commanders. That's in conference. Well, heck, the Eagles just traded Dotson in the division. The Commanders wide receivers now are Diami Brown, Terry McLaurin, Zaccheaus, Luke McCaffrey, Crowder, Martavis Bryant, believe it or not, still around, Byron Pringle, and the UFA from Georgia, Marcus Rosemi, Jack Saint, who I like a lot. And he's probably looking good in camp, which is, now he's got a better chance to make the roster. What would you want back from the Commanders? Because for me, I don't need a lot, but I need something. I'm trading you a 26-year-old all-pro receiver.
Yeah.
I need more than a third-round draft choice from the Eagles. I either need a Ben Sinnott. I need a Emmanuel Forbes. I don't think you're getting Terry McLaurin, but I need something. I need some player. I either need a corner, I need a defensive lineman. Jonathan Allen would be nice. I need something significant to make this trade if I'm the 49ers. What do you think the key ask is for the Niners? I'm a little surprised that they didn't want Dotson. I thought Dotson might be the perfect receiver to come back as part of a package, but obviously the Niners didn't like Dotson. So who do you think they like on the Commanders that they would take for Aiyuk?
Ideally, the better wide receiver to have gotten from Washington is Terry McLaurin over Jahan Dotson. I know that Dotson has that first-round pedigree. I watched him, scouted him, covered him at Penn State a couple of years ago in my previous job, and I really liked him when he was playing for Penn State. He's had 11 touchdowns in 2 years with really bad quarterback play. So I know his stock is a little bit down, but the Eagles are asking him to be weapon number 5 and wide receiver 3. And if I'm to trust one scouting department or organization, I'm going with Philadelphia over Washington. And Philadelphia had 2 third-round picks. So they still have one even after trading for Jahan Dotson. Now, Terry McLaurin is the player that I'd like back, but I don't think that's on the table any longer because if you're going to trade away Dotson, you're not going to trade away McLaurin now. And when you think about the Niners wide receiver situation, it's become very interesting with this nagging shoulder injury to Ricky Pearsall, which Mike Silver said on KNBR is something that the Niners were worried about in the pre-draft process. It had been an issue in college. Now it has come back. They were hoping that it wouldn't. And is Ricky Pearsall, your 31st overall pick, when there were really good players on the board, going to have a redshirt year? Does he have to undergo surgery to fix that shoulder? Is it worth it to just try to patch this up in hopes that it doesn't resurface? I think you might have to go under the knife, and you're looking at your first-round selection in what looks to be so far a very good draft class, not being able to contribute year one. It's a disaster. There were better players on the board. I thought the Niners should have gone a different route. We'll see what Pearsall is able to do, but the injuries to start his career aren't ideal. There was the hamstring injury, now the shoulder. Elsewhere with another rookie, what a couple of weeks Jacob Cowing has had. You've been at training camp. He's been playing excellent football. In that preseason game against New Orleans, I thought he was fantastic. He brings you juice and pop as a returner. I'm done with the Trent Taylor experiment. I think that Jacob Cowing should be this team's punt returner. He's so much more dynamic. The 38-yard catch downfield that he had from Josh Dobbs, sticky coverage, sideline awareness, concentration, got hit as he caught it, reeled it in. And then later, I thought his best play of the game was the 19-yard end around when he beat the edge to the sideline and then jetted upfield for 19 yards. That is a player who I think can be a weapon this year and really help you. So that does add to your wide receiver core if you can't get a receiver back from the Commanders. And he has inside, outside versatility, even though he's 5'8", 5'9". Stock is up for Jacob Cowing. And all of that college production that he had has led to him looking like a very smooth player and a player who is very seasoned. His college production was crazy. He had 316 career catches for nearly 4,500 yards and 33 touchdowns. So I'm hoping Kyle Shanahan's going to be able to utilize him. When you look elsewhere at this Commanders roster, who else could you bring in? You have questions at tight end too. The Niners really like Ben Sinnott in the pre-draft process. He was a stud at Kansas State. He's had a really good training camp in preseason. He could be the heir apparent to George Kittle as Kittle starts to get a little bit older. And we know that the Niners like to use some of those 2 tight end sets from time to time, and I think they should use them more. Ben Sinnott is a really good player. Elsewhere, where are you a little bit light as far as depth goes if you want to bring in a really good impact player who's young? Johnny Newton, also known as Jerzon Newton, who you and I like coming out of Illinois in the pre-draft process, was a player who the Commanders drafted, and the Niners are thin with defensive tackle depth. So I'd like a player like that. Emmanuel Forbes has lost all of his confidence. A.J. Brown owned him last year after Forbes was talking a little bit of smack. He's fallen down the depth chart, so the value for him isn't that high, but he's long, lanky, and he was a first-round pick. Yeah, he was a first-round pick. He's a good mover, really tall and long. He's kind of that physical corner who can run. Niners have done a good job with developing corners, and he could be under contract for a very affordable cap hit for the next 3 to 4 years, depending on if you exercise that 5th-year option. So that's another player who San Francisco could look to bring in. But I just circle back to the time to trade Aiyuk was before the draft. It's not now. And if the Niners do trade him, I still don't think they're going to get equal value back. 75 cents on the dollar. They'll have egg on their faces, and you're trading away an all-pro, and you're not getting equal value back. That's a disaster for your organization.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It absolutely is a disaster. They have to, they're trading a great player. They have to get, something back in return.
Yeah.
I guess the question is this: would you rather have that 3rd round pick and see if you can turn that into a T. Higgins or a Cortland Sutton or I don't know. I mean, the Minnesota receiver, the young kid who's having driving issues. Is there a receiver that Jordan Addison, is there a receiver they can turn an Eagles 3rd round draft choice, which is probably going to be almost in the 4th round, into? There's that versus, you're trading a great young receiver to the Commanders. Couldn't you get Ben Sinnott? You couldn't get the K-State rookie tight end. You couldn't get Christian McCaffrey's brother. I mean, I would take Sinnott and McCaffrey's brother and just call it a day and take a chance on that. I realize that's might be a low return for a guy who's a borderline all-pro player, but
right.
I don't know. I mean, it's got to be something, and I don't know that draft picks are going to be a major PR loss for the 49ers, and it's going to be ugly. So I think you got to get a player coming back. There's also talk the Steelers might still be involved here. If you were a gambling man at this juncture, with all that's been said, all that's been done, is he a Steeler? Is he a Commander? Is he a Niner? What do you think?
Look, I've predicted all offseason long. I think he's going to be a Niner, so I'm just going to stay on that. I still think that there's a way that they get this done. I just can't fathom how an organization that has been this successful, that's been to 7 NFC championship games in 14 years and multiple Super Bowls, is going to do something so stupid when they, as an organization, always want to win a negotiation. They always want to win the PR battle. That's why there are always these leaks that go out to all of these different reporters from somebody in the Niners organization. I thought it was great how Brandon Aiyuk called him out for that, but it's important to control the narrative here. And I just can't fathom how in this Super Bowl window, you're going to let a few $1 million get in the way of you not bringing back an all-pro who, when you took him 25th overall, you wanted him to become this player. And when you draft a player and you want him to become an all-pro, you know that you're going to have to pay him at some point. And San Francisco has done a great job of taking care of their own core players who they have drafted and developed and seen become great players. So I just don't know how this late in the game, this close to week 1, San Francisco is going to trade him away. I do want to throw another scenario out there.
Yeah.
Is that because it is so late in the process, could San Francisco hold on to Aiyuk? Aiyuk doesn't play. And then the Niners, as you approach the NFL trade deadline or a few weeks into the season, they see how this offense does without Aiyuk. If they're struggling, then they try to trade him away, and you monitor the market elsewhere across the NFL, and you look at Davante Adams. Could he demand a trade because everything just falls to shit with the Las Vegas Raiders? That is a complete plausible possibility, because we saw in the receiver documentary how miserable Davante Adams was. And at 31 years old, he's even said it. I don't have a lot of time left. I want to maximize my remaining years. Now, that's on him for miscalculating asking out of Green Bay and going to the Raiders, but could he ask out? Could the situation in Cincinnati, where Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are still both looking for contracts and both haven't gotten paid, could that open up an avenue for you to bring in one of those players? Could it be a 3-team NBA-like trade that we've talked about a couple of times here when we've done our appearances together, where you get some draft capital back and then you flip that for another wide receiver? I think at this point, all avenues and options are wide open.
Which avenue do you like? I mean, because we don't know what's open and what's not, what's possible, what's not. If this were you and you were, first of all, there are people in the chat. I here give you an example of this one. Kyle McKiernan, good friend. He says, I don't think it's Lynch's issue. I think it's a Parag or a Jed thing. We don't know. It might be. But
Yeah.
as far as where the Niners go from here, if it was you want Cortland Sutton, you want Devontae, who's 32, probably more at the tail end. I would rather, to be honest, go the other way. I'd rather see them try to invest in some young receiver like a Jordan Addison, because a guy like Addison's got a future. A guy
Yeah.
like Devontae's got a past.
Mhm.
I'd much rather, if I'm going to trade, if I'm moving off of Brandon Aiyuk, I want a young player that's got a future. And it doesn't have to be a receiver, but I want a young player. Ben Sinnott, I think, has shown some things in the preseason. He's a good-looking tight end. He would slot in easily at tight end too for the Niners.
Yeah.
If you could get Ben Sinnott and Luke McCaffrey, is that a fair trade? I think it is a fair trade.
Yeah, I would like that trade. And those are two players that in the pre-draft process I really liked. And I think that would be not equal value to trading away an all-pro who I think is going to continue to get better at 26 years old, but you do get some really intriguing young pieces back. You get the heir apparent to George Kittle, and you shore up backup tight end, which right now is a massive concern. You can't tell me that Eric Sauerbert is going to be the backup for this team. He does nothing for me. Cam Latu stinks. Braden Willis hasn't shown me much, and they haven't really played Mason Pline. And I think that he's raw, so he might be a practice squad player. At wide receiver, you're loaded in that room, but Luke McCaffrey is a very interesting prospect. Now, what's interesting about Davante Adams is that his cap hits after this year, and this year he's extremely affordable. I think it's a cap hit of like $14 million. It's very expensive after this year, but it's non-guaranteed. So if you traded for Adams, he helps you in your Super Bowl window right now. He's still probably a top 10 wide receiver in the game. His production hasn't fallen off, even though he's had awful quarterback play. And you could restructure that contract after this year to make him affordable. And then he is much more affordable as compared to a new Brandon Aiyuk contract. You asked me, though, what I would want. Look,
Yeah,
I've had a
if you're playing, you know the talent, you know the teams, you know all the players out there. If you were Lynch, what do you want to do? If I'm Lynch, I my first inclination is to keep Aiyuk.
Yes.
But since I think it's gotten personal, I think it's probably time to move off of Aiyuk. And I wouldn't want to move off him for an old guy like a Devontae. I'd want to move off of him and see if I could, and maybe it's separate transactions, but part with him, see what you can get, and then turn around and see if you can add another young receiver to your mix that you like. And there's a lot of receivers in this league that are out there.
Yeah. But does Adams help you win a Super Bowl this year?
I mean, he could. I mean, he definitely
and then
could.
You have Pearsall and Cowing waiting in the wings, and then that's kind of replenishing the cupboard as far as your talent goes. You have Jawan Jennings under contract again. That would probably lead to you holding on to Deebo Samuel. I mean, I think that could be a move that at least propels San Francisco to continue to stay in the Super Bowl window. What would I ideally want? Look, coming out of Arizona State, I had a draft crush on Brandon Aiyuk. I saw what he did year one when he hurdled over Marcus Epps during that COVID year en route to the end zone. I saw him lead the team in receiving as a rookie. I saw him in the doghouse, come out of the doghouse, end 2021 on a tear. I saw him have his best career year in 2022 when you saw the full route tree, route running, footwork, him embracing blocking, him playing the game the right way, all come to fruition. And then this past year, we saw him develop into one of the best wide receivers in the game. You know, going into the 2022 season before he really broke out, I was saying on the 49ers report, Aiyuk over CD Lamb. Give me Aiyuk over CD Lamb. He's tougher. He's more physical. He doesn't get the targets that CD does, but I think he's more reliable. He has better hands. That's the type of football player that I want. And now he's become an all-pro player. He's had this great camaraderie on field with your young quarterback in Brock Purdy. He gave the Niners a deep threat last year, second in yards per catch, and was so efficient with running every route on the route tree. He's such a dynamic weapon. And if you trade him away and you don't bring back a wide receiver, you lack that true outside guy. Deebo Samuel is not that. He's more of a weapon, and he's a one-of-one weapon, but he's not that outside guy. You're going to move Jawan Jennings to the outside, and he didn't have more than 30 catches last year. That's a risk. You're going to rely on Ricky Pearsall, who's banged up, and Jacob Cowing, who's also a rookie. That's a risk. So the best route to go for San Francisco is to trade Brandon Aiyuk away. I know that he's expensive. I know that Purdy's going to demand that deal, but the salary cap's going to continue to go up. We might have an 18th game. You can find ways to restructure contracts. If you give Trent Williams guaranteed money and you backload his contract, if you give him an extension, you can open up $15+ million over the next 30 years. So there are so many ways to pull off salary cap gymnastics that I think we obsess over this cap number, but keep in mind how much the salary cap has gone up the last 10 years.
It's always so interesting this last week to see how teams pare their roster down, and also all the mini deals that are made around the league on guys who are on the bubble. You know, you're on the bubble on this team, but you know what? You might, if this team's willing to make a trade, you might be on a different team. One interesting name that's out there that I'm really intrigued by is Kadarius Toney. Now, Kadarius Toney is with Kansas City, and he was a former first-round pick by the New York Giants. I loved him at Florida. Kansas City declined his fifth-year option, so he's a pending free agent. He's a 25-year-old, and his highlight reel is awesome. Now, he's made some ridiculous mistakes. I mean, He lined up offsides. But he's an enormously talented kid with body control and stop and start ability and explosiveness and open field running ability. And I just think, man, if you saw this guy at Florida, if Kansas City is going to cut this guy, I would sign him. If Kansas City's going to cut this guy, I would call Brett Veach and offer a day 3 pick to trade for him. In a lot of ways, I think you lose a dynamic piece with Brandon Aiyuk. I know Tony's had some issues, but you know what? He is dynamic. And if I were the 49ers, this is a guy that I would be hunting for at the cut down, just because I think in Shanahan's system and with their locker room, I just think he would fly right, play good football, and he's an enormous talent. And I think he'd be scary in this run after the catch kind of based scheme that the Niners employ under Shanahan. What do you think? Is there anybody roster bubble wise that you're looking for? And what do you think of Toney as a 49er if Kansas City either traded him or cut him?
So when it comes down to Kadarius Toney, this is a classic example of a player who, if you turn on his highlight reel, you'll say, wow, with what he did at Florida and how he was used on end arounds, gadget plays, in the return game, as a wide receiver. He has such quick feet, short area quickness where he's really dynamic. When you think about the Super Bowl 2 years ago, he had a massive momentum-changing punt return that really got the momentum going for Kansas City against Philadelphia. And then he scored a huge touchdown in that game as well. But in the words of a good friend of mine, the real Coach JB, Jason Brown, the star of the Netflix series, Last Chance U, Kadarius Toney is known as a shitbird. The New York Giants got rid of him because of character concerns, always having these knick-knack injuries, and then they trade him to the Kansas City Chiefs. And Andy Reid, historically, Philadelphia, Kansas City, has always taken chances on players. He's always taken those risks, whether it be Michael Vick coming out of prison, whether it be Tyreek Hill coming out of college or having some of the issues that he had early in his career, whether it be a multitude of players who he has taken chances on. He took a chance on Kadarius Toney, and there have been some highs, but there have been a lot of lows. So bad that he was inactive against the Niners in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So, look, I think at some point you are who you are, and you're either going to change or not. I don't think Kadarius Toney fits what the Niners organization is all about. One of the things that stood out to me being around this team during the Super Bowl, every player was gracious with their time, very enjoyable to talk to. They had no problems with these media obligations. All of the players on this Niners team, and you know this from being in the locker room all the time, high character dudes. Kadarius Toney doesn't fit that mold. He's brittled, or he's brittle, he's injured, and I don't think that him and Kyle Shanahan would get along all that well. He's too much of a headache for me.
Harry Balzac says, which is a good name, Harry
Nice name,
Balzac.
nice name.
Says, come on, Larry, you're pulling names out of your ass. All right. Don't kill me on this.
Look, if it's for a 7th rounder, I mean, sometimes you take chances on these guys, but we're talking about his 3rd stop.
I know, but I'm looking at Ronnie Bells of the world, and I'm going, you know what? Why mess around with Ronnie Bell if you can get a Kadarius Toney? All right, Darrell Taylor was traded from the Seahawks to the Bears for a day 3 pick. This is exactly the kind of trade that I was hoping John Lynch would make, especially with Drake Jackson done for the year. Man, I mean, Darrell Taylor, I think this is kind of interesting. Why? Because, one, I would have loved to have had Darrell Taylor. I can understand why Schneider – I never banked on Schneider to trade Darrell Taylor to the Niners because I just – it's a division thing, and I think he wouldn't do that. But it does add another defensive end to the Bears who already have Montez Sweat. And the Bears already had a guy who I think is really talented named Dominique Robinson, who's on the bubble to make the roster for Chicago. Former wide receiver, I think former quarterback, defensive end. He's about 270 pounds or about 260 pounds, 6'5", really, really, really athletic. I just think that whether it's Tyree Wilson from the Raiders, who I think there's been talk the Raiders may trade him at this cut down. It's Darrell Taylor, who's now a Bear. It's Joseph Osai from Cincinnati. It's somebody else. I just think that the Niners are going to want one more defensive lineman that's not Alex Barrett. That's not just a practice squad guy. And I could see them trading a day 3 pick or a day 2 pick or something for a defensive lineman, maybe of note that Chris could plug in and work with. I think they're one D lineman shy. What do you think? I mean, is Tyree Wilson? There's talk that the Raiders may trade him. Would you be interested in Tyree Wilson if the Raiders decided they would take a 3rd or 4th round pick for him in next year's draft?
I know some viewers are in the comment section saying, Larry, you're pulling names out of your ass. Let me give you props because on this show last week, you brought up Tyree Wilson. And I talked with our Raiders host here at Chat Sports on the Raiders Report, and I talked about this upcoming preseason game, and I asked him for some key storylines, key roster battles, what he's going to be looking out for. He said Tyree Wilson needs to play well, otherwise he could get traded. So I think Tyree Wilson, even though he was a 1st-round pick 2 drafts ago in 2023, is on the hot seat with the Raiders. And I look at him as a reclamation project. He could be a good depth piece. He's under team control for the next couple of years. I love the ability. And when you match that ability with quality coaching and a well-run organization that's a winning organization as compared to an awful organization that's a perennial loser with all this dysfunction with the Raiders, that's the type of player that I'm willing to take a chance on. It's a player with unbelievable ability, hasn't quite panned out, but you bring him into a better culture with the best defensive line coach in the NFL, Chris Krueger, who has an unbelievable track record of these reclamation projects, developing defensive linemen, and using them to their strengths. And Tyree Wilson is a player who can play edge, but he can play defensive tackle. What did the Niners miss last year? They missed having an Arden Key, a Charles Omenihu, a Jordan Willis.
The NASCAR package.
Exactly. The NASCAR package. They missed that. They didn't have that. Charles Omenihu and Arden Key were really good players for this team. And I know that Cleveland Ferrell played pretty well. That was one of my predictions with Chris Krueger. He was another former Raider like Arden Key, who comes to the Niners and has a near career year. Now he goes to Washington, and I think that Dan Quinn's going to be able to use him well. But those are the types of players that can really impact this defense. And he's still young, and I think there's a better football player in there, but the Raiders are so down on him, and they've panicked, and they've moved off these guys before. That's the type of player that I'm trying to pounce on. No character issues that I know about. In the pre-draft process coming out of Texas Tech, he did have a little bit of a foot issue, which is a little bit of a concern, but I like the player that Tyree Wilson is, and I like the usage and the role that he could play. And then lastly, he fulfills something that the Niners need. They're light at depth, at edge, and defensive tackle. They need a player like that, and I think that he could be a steal for San Francisco. And they have a lot of draft capital in the 2025 NFL draft. If it takes a third, a fourth, maybe a combination of picks, that's something that I would think about, because I think the Niners have to get deeper along the defensive line.
Yeah, and it seems unthinkable that a team would part ways with this guy so close after taking him in the top 10, but it's the Raiders. I mean, they parted ways with Alex Leatherwood, and this is what they do. They make bad picks. They divest themselves at a loss of those picks. They, cycle, rinse, repeat. I mean, that's basically it. One other last thought, and now this is a wild thought, okay, but go with me on this for just a second. What the Niners seem like they're staring at, and this is my final Aiyuk thought on this stream, is a PR nightmare. That's what it looks like they're staring at to me, Chase, a PR nightmare. They're either going to have Aiyuk back as an island unto himself, pissed off as hell because they made him play on the 5th-year option. So that's one option. And I think that's what would happen. He'd be pissed off as hell. He'd pout and sit in the corner of the room and be angry. They can trade him at a loss, it sounds like, to the Commanders or Steelers. And then John Lynch is going to get ripped by the media and the fans, and people are going to go to town on John Lynch. And suddenly it's going to go from a very comfortable job to a very uncomfortable job for John Lynch. So that's another option. Or the third option, and this is not really, I don't think of it as a viable option, but it might be their best option. If you're looking at a PR nightmare because you're going to lose Aiyuk for nothing or make him play on the 5th-year option, why not attach other assets to him and try for the home run ball and see if you can get Ja'Marr Chase out of Cincinnati, who's clearly better, clearly the best receiver in the game today. It doesn't solve your cap problem,
no.
But I'm getting the picture that it's not about the problem here. Doesn't sound to me, Chase, like it's the cap. The problem here sounds to me like it's a personal situation, that it's gotten personal between Aiyuk and the Niners, that it's gotten personal maybe between Shanahan and Aiyuk. It seems more personal than anything. Doesn't that make sense to say, yeah, I mean, the Niners have gone 3 years without a number one. Would it really kill them to trade another number one pick or a 1 and a 2 and Aiyuk to Cincinnati and go for the better receiver in Chase? And if it is a personal thing, just wipe the slate clean and start fresh with a new, better, younger, better option at receiver? I don't know. I mean, nobody's throwing that out. And yet Chase is sitting there unsigned. Cincinnati's not signing him. He's in exactly the same position. Instead of losing out on Aiyuk, why not trade up? Why not attach other assets and see if you can get even a better receiver? What do you think? I mean, is it totally crazy? Is Cincinnati absolutely not going to bite? I mean, I don't understand what their plan is with their receivers either. Higgins is in limbo and Chase is in limbo.
The Bengals are also a historically very cheap organization, and now they have, as you mentioned, 2 wide receivers who are looking to get paid, and I think they only hold on to one of them. And with Aiyuk and the Niners, things seem to be off. With Ja'Marr Chase and the Bengals, that relationship seems to be a little bit tumultuous right now. A couple of ways that you can look at this. Number one, this would be the ultimate flex by San Francisco. You wait. You can't come to an agreement with Brandon Aiyuk. He wants $30 million per year. There are a couple of reasons why you don't want to give him that money. Since the Christian McCaffrey trade, you're 32nd in pass rate. And do you want to pay a wide receiver $30 million per year when you are going to continue to be a run-centric offense? Also, are you sure that he is going to continue to be a top 5, top 10 wide receiver? And those are the hesitations, whether it be John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan in paying him, Parag and Jed York in paying him. The issue with Ja'Marr Chase, if you don't want to pay Brandon Aiyuk $30 million per year, I think Ja'Marr Chase is going to want 30 to 32, maybe $33 million per year. Now with Ja'Marr Chase, he's going into year 4. So you don't really have to worry about this until next offseason. If you did trade for Ja'Marr Chase, though, and you signed him to a contract, $30 million per year, and he ends up having another masterful season, and you trade away Aiyuk and you attach some picks there, if you sign him now, do you get him for cheaper than what he might demand this time next year when the salary cap goes up again, and then inevitably the wide receiver market is going to continue to increase, and his price tag in turn will go up? There's no doubt that Jamar Chase is up there with Justin Jefferson, two of the best wide receivers in the game. And Jamar Chase, I think, is going to want to demand $35, maybe $36 million per year. But my goodness, what great production he's had for the Bengals in 3 years. I mean, he comes in as a rookie and was the offensive rookie of the year, a second-team All-Pro and a Pro Bowler as a rookie, had 128 targets, 81 catches, 1,400 yards, and 13 touchdowns. Sophomore campaign, 134 targets, 87 grabs, more than 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns. And then last year, 145 targets, 100 catches, 1,200 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Unquestionably the better player as compared to Aiyuk. What if Aiyuk wants 30? You somehow get wind that Jamar Chase wants 30, and you're like, well, hold on, we can get the better player here. It would be hilarious. It would be a flex. It would be wild. And it would definitely help you in the Super Bowl window right now. Yeah.
It would be wild. And it to me, it would be maybe one of the only ways for the 49ers to emerge from this and be patted on the back. Nobody, if they sign him tomorrow and he shows up and he plays week 1 against the Jets and he plays great, we're talking about Aiyuk now, they're still going to get ripped for this ridiculous, endless, negotiation.
Yeah.
So you lose if you sign him. You lose if you trade him. You lose. I mean, they're literally set up to lose almost at every turn. The one way they win is if somehow they turned him into Jamar Chase. Yeah. And I think Niner fans wouldn't even care about the picks, because we just saw a 3-year window where the Niners went to multiple NFC championship games and a Super Bowl, and they had no number 1 picks because they blew it on Trey Lance. So that, I don't think anybody's going to be too pissed about losing picks. They'll just be so excited that they have Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
That it will be like, look at this shiny object over here. And then suddenly John Lynch wouldn't be ripped. And suddenly it would be this like celebration as opposed to a failure. All right. Just an idea.
Hey, we know about the Niners. They want to win the negotiation. They want to win the PR battle.
I know. Seriously. Yep. Okay. A couple last ones. Number 2 quarterback. Who's it going to be?
Very interesting question. And I don't think the Niners know yet. And you have 2 different quarterbacks of 2 different skill sets, right? Josh Dobbs is the much better athlete. He gives you a much better running threat. He's much more dynamic as far as his dual threat ability. He can make really impressive plays out of structure and improvisationally. The run that he had against the Saints last week was absolutely ridiculous. It was something out of a Madden Michael Vick playbook where he drops back, evades pressure, breaks out of a sack contain, runs right, runs all the way across the field to the left, and picks up a huge run. What quarterbacks in the league are able to pull off a play like that? Very, very few, right? The issue with Josh Dobbs is that he might play really, really well for a game, 2, maybe 3, but history shows literally his entire career, and this is why he struggled to find his footing to start his career after being a 3rd or 4th round pick out of Tennessee, is that once the playbook is on him, once he has to play for an extended period of time, that's when he struggles a little bit. But also in this offense, look, the narrative out there that Kyle Shanahan doesn't elevate quarterbacks or develop quarterbacks, I think is crazy. He went to a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. He, with Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, has gone to an NFC title game and a Super Bowl, and we've seen these backup quarterbacks play well. CJ Beathard, Nick Mullins put up really good numbers back several years ago. And could Josh Dobbs be better in this offensive system? So that's the Dobbs aspect of this. And when it comes down to the casual fan and highlight reel-worthy plays, a lot of people are going to say, Josh Dobbs, Josh Dobbs, Josh Dobbs. But does he run the offense as efficiently as Brandon Allen, who is not the dynamic runner, will not make plays out of structure, won't make plays with his legs, but might operate the offense the way that Kyle Shanahan sees fit? Ball out, on time, accurately, in rhythm, very accurate. And throws the football where Kyle Shanahan wants it to go. And Kyle Shanahan, since becoming this head coach, has been just a magician with creating yards after the catch numbers for his weapons. I think the Niners are number one in the league every year since 2017. A big reason for that: ball out on time, accurately, in space, with the play design, and those receivers are able to pick up yards after the catch. With Dobbs, sometimes he has to create as the play breaks down, and he's a magician in that way. So two different quarterbacks who bring vastly different skill sets to the table. It tells me it's still a competition because preseason game 1, Brandon Allen starts. Preseason game 2, Josh Dobbs comes in and he relieves Brock Purdy, and he looked damn good in doing so. Tonight against the Raiders, we'll certainly see what both those quarterbacks can do. I will say I'm not sure who wins QB2. I don't think the Niners know. What I do know is that my concerns with the backup quarterback spot, which were big concerns going into camp in the preseason, they've died down a little bit, because I think if Brock Purdy were to go down, you have two pretty good options there.
I can't, when you see something that's so bad, you can't unsee it. I can't unsee Vikings Bears last year on Monday night, late in the year.
It was bad.
Where Dobbs was just shitty.
It was bad.
He was horrible.
And that was after a few games,
It was after a few games. Now, he looked good against the Niners at Levi's in a game the Niners beat Arizona in like week 2 or week 3. And he had beaten Dallas in Dallas, I believe, the week before. So
it was in Arizona, but it was
it was in Arizona.
Win.
Okay.
Big win.
Yeah. That was a big win. Big win for Dobbs. I don't know. Dobbs is the same guy. I mean, Dobbs is the same guy that was terrible against the Bears. He's the same guy that was good against the Niners. He has good days. He has bad days. I think I look at it this way. I think his highs are going to be a little bit higher than Allen's. I think his lows are going to be lower than Allen's. So if you want a little bit more of the higher highs and a little bit more of the lower lows, I would say roll with Dobbs as number 2 over Allen. I think Allen's going to give you a little bit less than Dobbs, but his floor is a little bit higher than Dobbs.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I see that. So I think the question I would have is this: are the Niners going to have 3 quarterbacks on their 53, or are they going to have 2 on the 53 and 1 on the practice squad? And if that's the case, does Dobbs or Allen make it to the practice squad? Or is it you got to pick between Dobbs and Allen at number 2, and then Mordecai is the guy that gets through waivers, and he's your 3rd quarterback on the practice squad? Because I'm looking at they're going to need maybe an extra D lineman, maybe an extra O lineman, definitely an extra corner. Yeah. They've got some roster, they got a lot of receivers, they got a lot of running backs. You know what I'm saying? They're really challenged to fill out this roster. I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be very difficult to have 3 quarterbacks on the final 53.
But given the quarterback turmoil that they've had, especially I think they're scarred following that NFC title game 2 years ago, and the quality play that you've seen from Brandon Allen and Josh Dobbs, I don't think you're left with a choice. I think you have to rock with 3 QBs, and then you have 2 active on game day with the new rule that was implemented last year after Purdy got hurt. Then you have that emergency quarterback, and maybe it changes given the opponent that you take on every week. Who's going to be the backup? If you want a more mobile option, Josh Dobbs. If you want the run the system option, that's Brandon Allen. But to me, Brandon Allen kind of surprised me with a little bit of zip against Tennessee. And he threw the ball accurately. The 2 best balls that he threw, I thought, were long balls to Tay Martin and Ronnie Bell. They were both dropped. So I just think that at the most important position, you can't risk losing one of those quarterbacks. And I think that you might have to have 3 on the 53, which then leads to you having to make a difficult cut elsewhere on the roster.
Harry Balzac says Dobbs is the better player, but he will be traded with a 7th rounder for a 6th rounder, which seems to be like a real popular trade these days.
He could get traded. That is a possibility.
Yeah, there's no question. A lot of people would like to have him. All right, and the last one, and this might be the toughest cut. Who is going to be the corner that you're cutting? Because this is the area that whoever gets cut here is going to wind up somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because there are too many good players. And most teams go, just so, people are saying, well, how does this normally work? Normally, teams go with 5 corners. And, maybe in a pass-happy league, you could go with 6. And the 49ers situation is unique because they've got Lenore, Yadam, and Mooney Ward. And then they have Ambry and Rock Ya-Sin, who's played very well in this camp, and Renardo Green. So that's 6 right there. And you got Womack, that's 7. You got Luter, who's like the physical prototype, that's 8. And you got Chase Lucas, who's a pretty good corner and a decent special teamer, that's 9. So it's going to be really hard to cut that down to 6. Cut 3. Okay, so I'll cut Chase Lucas and maybe Ambry Thomas because of the injury designation. But I'm still having a really hard time getting from 7 corners down to 6. And I don't want to cut Luter. I don't want to cut Womack. And then Rock Ya-Sin and Yadam have played really well as young veterans. You're not cutting Renardo. He's going to start. So it's Womack and Luter are, in the crosshairs there. And I hope they both make it. I don't know what they're going to do there. But if you were going to cut a corner, which corner are you going to cut?
Well, with this conversation, I saw Grant Cohn tweet out the other day, and I love Grant. I think he does a tremendous job, and obviously you guys do your show together. I just disagree with him on this, and we're allowed to disagree. He said of all the 49ers teams since 2019, this one has the least depth. I actually thought they addressed depth well this offseason. Do you think that this is a deep team?
Well, I mean, they're deeper on the O-line, clearly. They're deep
at
wide
linebacker,
receiver,
deep at corner.
Deep at linebacker, deep at corner.
Wide out,
very deep at wide out, quarterback. I mean, they're deep. Where they're thin in 2 spots. They don't really have a good tight end room
at all.
Kittle.
Yeah.
It's Kittle and just dudes.
And safety.
And I kind of like the safety room because you got 3 young, really good ones there. But I was going to say defensive end because you're leaning on Beal
and tackle.
And you're leaning on, I don't know. I mean, maybe Alex Barrett. So, I mean, Beal and Alex Barrett as regular defensive end rotation guys is
not ideal.
That's not championship.
That's why Tyree Wilson would be a good get.
Even if Tyree Wilson just bull rushed 80% of the time, he'd be a good get.
Yeah. So, back to your question about corner.
Yeah, which corner would you part with there?
So, I think the players who make it, obviously, Charvarius Ward.
Yep.
Diamador Lenore.
Yep. Who probably gets as an extension before long. That would be my guess. He'd be the next guy.
Renardo Green.
Yep. Those are your starters, I think.
Isaac Yadam, who's been hurt, but a good analytical player, and I think he could be a gem. I think you go.
I mean, Rock Ya-Sin has looked really, really good.
I like Rock Ya-Sin as the 5th corner. He's had injury issues, but he's a former 2nd-round pick who, when he's been on the field, he's played well. So that's 5. And then, honestly,
Luter and Womack,
I think you go Darrell Luter Jr. 6th, and then Womack and Chase Lucas, Ambry Thomas don't make the team.
See, I would try to steal a roster spot somewhere and keep Womack.
Go 7.
Why? Because look what happened last year.
You're thin at slot corner then if you let him
Jameson.
Go.
You cut Deshaun Jameson last year, and you spent the next 10 weeks signing different corners off the street, including Logan Ryan at the end. So they brought in the guy from Dallas. They brought in a bunch of guys. And it's like, dude, don't cut good corners. How about that? Because you cut Jameson, and then you chased a Jameson-like player all year.
You could get some flexibility if Talanoa Hufanga can't play week 1 and you go 3 safeties on the opening 53, and that opens up a 7th corner, and then you just go George Odom, Jair Brown, Malik Mustafa.
Because there's no Hufanga because he's PUP or something, or
maybe misses the first month if he's not ready. Maybe that opens up a roster spot. I mean, because I'm looking at the team. Do you go 2 quarterbacks? Is that what you have to do to open up a 7th spot for a corner? I mean, you could do that too. You could go 3 running backs, but that's risky for Kyle Shanahan because his running backs always get hurt. And McCaffrey's had, I think, 2 calf injuries the last 2 years. Yeah. 3 calf injuries the last 3 years, I think.
Do you go 2 tight ends?
You could do that.
They've gone 4 at times. I mean, but I mean,
Yeah.
the weakness is at tight end.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Klein, but he hasn't even gotten on the field, and the rest of those guys are just guys.
I just think realistically, Klein is a practice squad guy. Do you go Kittle and Sauerbert, and then like Jawan Jennings plays hybrid slot tight end at times?
Yes.
Maybe that opens up a roster spot.
Or Conley.
Yep.
Maybe you flex out a Conley or a JJ.
Receiver's interesting too, because I think you only go 6 there, but who gets that 6th spot? I think it's Conley.
But then the question is,
do you have Aiyuk?
What role, if Garendo is going to get a spot on this roster, can Garendo be the jack of all trades? Can Garendo be your backup fullback, your backup tight end, you know what I mean? Can he fill a bunch of roles, and then maybe Garendo allows you to go thin at multiple spots and go with the extra corner? I don't want to see the Niners do this. I don't want to see them pare down their corners, go with 5, have an injury, and spend all of October and November signing worse corners than they had in camp with them this summer.
Yeah. And, I'm thinking about this now. It's the optics and the blow of this has been softened by this draft class looking really damn good. Look, I think Ricky Pearsall might be an IR candidate, and that opens up a roster spot.
Wow.
I mean, seriously, like if he's dealing with the shoulder, he hasn't done anything throughout training camp. Do you just put him on IR, not season ending, or do you put him on PUP, and that gives you another roster spot to have some flexibility with? I think it's a possibility.
Last question on the way out the door here. We appreciate it. We normally go about 45 minutes. We're an hour and 6 here. We're a little long.
We have a 10 p.m. Eastern game tonight, 7 o'clock West Coast. So
seriously, I thought of you because I was like, dude, Chase is doing incredible content, but he's doing it on the East Coast. That game is going to be
Central, but I'll be at work at 2 a.m.
That's right. So that's going to be a 9 p.m. kick. Or 10? 9 Central, 10 Eastern. So that game's going to end at midnight Central.
Yeah, got to do a post-game show.
And then the post-game starts.
Then I have a watch party tomorrow at noon, my time.
Oh, my God. For Eagles, what time's the Eagle game tomorrow?
Noon. So I'm live at 11 a.m. It's brutal.
Drinking? Yeah. Will there be drinking in the watch party?
I've toned it down a little bit because I'm in such great shape. But, hey, we'll take down some drinks.
You got to – first of all, nothing looks cooler than shotgunning a beer on camera.
Yeah, especially when Pat McAfee's in Ireland and he's taken down like 15 beers on ESPN. I
was watching Sour Death Sam.
I saw that. Yeah,
Did you see him shotgun one the other day?
Yeah. It was a little sloppy.
It took me back to college.
It was a little sloppy, but yeah, mine's much more cleaner than that. But I like the comedy that he brings to YouTube.
Yeah, so I'd love to see you shotgun some beers this year.
I will.
I would, instead of like, drawing it back because you're getting a little criticism, I'd lean into it, man. Lean into it. Right now, you're the only content creator out there who's throwing them back with a vengeance.
See, I'm not worried about the criticism. My thing is, now that I'm getting older, the wake up and the hangover sucks, and I'm trying to like fulfill and continue these fitness goals, and it clashes. But I'm gonna tap into it. We're a good party on YouTube for sure.
There you go. No, seriously, you guys do an amazing job, and that's why you got such a huge audience. Mitchell and Ness, it's time for Larry to start pounding beers and taking shots. Yeah, seriously. Get Kevin here. We'll
I mean, if somebody were to send a $50 super chat here on the Krug show, I would take one down. I'm just saying.
You go. Chase has put out the challenge. If somebody wants to if you're out there, if you want to throw a 50 spot, Chase will shotgun a beer right here. All right, give me the surprise 49er story of note at the cut down. Is there going to be one? We've definitely speculated on some. Tyree Wilson. Maybe, the couple guys that I saw that were in a Bleacher Report article that I saw might get cut that would intrigue me. One was Louis Cine from Minnesota, though I don't know about the physical condition of his leg. The other one's Tutu Atwell. Niners are always looking for a go pattern guy. They're saying the Rams may wind up cutting or trading Tutu Atwell.
Yeah,
that would be intriguing. I threw out Tyree Wilson. The only other names I saw that were interesting Hassan Reddick, DeMarvin Leal from Pittsburgh. Those are the guys that they. Oh, yesterday I saw that there was an article coming out of San Diego or out of LA saying that the Chargers may cut Jerry's kid, Brendan Rice, who went in the 7th round, and maybe Kamani Vidal. And a lot of people think Vidal's a fantasy football sleeper. He hardly ever fumbled, if maybe one time at Troy.
Running
He's
back
got good speed.
Yeah,
he's a good back. He's about 215 pounds. He's kind of shorter. But somebody like that, like I would like to see the 49ers be open-minded. And if you had a great grade on a guy in the draft and the Eagles cut him or the Commanders or the Jets or whatever, I'd like to see them give themselves a roster spot or two for that unforeseen player that you loved that shakes free at the cut down. And maybe it's Rice's kid, and maybe it's maybe you pick up a Rice's kid and you put him on the practice squad. I like Brendan Rice, and I really like Tutu Atwell and like some of these guys that I'm hearing that may get cut. Give me a surprise 49er angle or story that you'll be looking for at the cut down. Is there somebody around the league or a trade or something that you're looking for regarding the Niners?
Yeah, I think they'll make a trade for a defensive end, a defensive tackle, a tight end. I think those are all possibilities just to address some of the depth issues there. Now, is that a trade on the periphery of the roster, or is it for a marquee player? You kind of have marquee players in those spots, so that's why I think it's more of a depth piece. Tyree Wilson, I think, would be a great trade because there's so much upside and intrigue there. So that's what I'm looking out for. And then, for the Niners, I think, look, Ronnie Bell had a good preseason last year. He has some special teams ability and is a good blocker, but I think that he could get cut, which if I told you that this time last year, you'd be surprised if he wasn't on this team in 2024. I think the end is here for Danny Gray, former 3rd rounder, Cam Latu, former 3rd rounder. 3rd rounder has really just evaded San Francisco. Luckily, it looks as though they hit this year with Dominic Pooney, but I think they could just flush and move on from Ronnie Bell, Danny Gray, Cam Latu. I think it's time to end the Trent Taylor experiment, go with Jacob Cowing as your punt returner. And those are kind of like the surprising moves that maybe at the start of camp, a lot of people didn't envision happening.
Any Eagles that are on the bubble that could be interesting? I've read that, one of the guys that I loved in the draft process was Trevor Keegan, the Michigan.
He's played really well. I think he's going to make the team. But Eli Ricks is a corner who might get let go because they're deep there. He was the number 1 corner coming out of his high school class, went to LSU, then Alabama, made the team last year as a UDFA. He's really long, and I think he's really good. I just don't know if there's a spot for him on the team. So that's
Trevor Keegan's going to make it, though. That was Michigan's captain.
Yeah, Baldy did a breakdown on him, and I think anytime Baldy's doing a breakdown on an offensive lineman, that player is a shoo-in to make the squad.
Aeneas Smith, Johnny Wilson, are they going to make it or
get cut? Yeah, I think Johnny Wilson makes it. I think Aeneas Smith, I think he gets cut, doesn't make the 53. So I don't think he goes through waivers to come back to the Eagles practice squad. Maybe he does, but look, he was 5'9", and ran a 4.5 40 for a small wide receiver in the pre-draft. I know he had surgery on his shin, but he's looked small and played slow. So I don't think there's a spot for him on that team, especially after the Jahan Dotson trade.
How about on the defense? Last one on the Eagles. I mean, a buddy of mine who scouts loves Jalix Hunt, who is the one of their picks that they got from Houston Christian.
I think he gets rotation snaps this year.
Really? He's looked good. He's wearing 58
He looked really good. Oren Burks might not make the team because he's been hurt all throughout training camp.
How about Bradbury? Is he get dealt?
He's been playing backup safety, and I think he makes the team as a backup safety because Sidney Brown might start the year on PUP. They kind of like him at backup safety, but if a corner or needy team calls, I think that he could get traded. Marlon Tupuolutu is a defensive tackle who might not make the team because they've had this kid, Thomas Booker,
from Stanford,
play really well. Stanford guy, right?
Yeah. He's a great athlete.
And then at tight end, I think EJ Jenkins might make the team and Albert Okwuegbunam might not. So that's a tight end depth piece, maybe.
Oh, I like Albert O. But Albert O is a great athlete. He just hasn't put it all together there.
I covered him in high school. He's a freak.
And Becton's going to start at right guard?
Yeah.
Wow.
So Tyler, he's going to start at right guard, and Tyler Steen is his backup, but he's been dealing with ankle injury issues. So
good stuff, man. Devin White looked pretty good this summer. How's he look?
awesome. I think he's going to have a breakout year.
Oh shit. I
Yeah.
want to hear that. I definitely want to hear that.
He's a stud.
He is a stud.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for us. I'm on the KMBR pregame show at 5 on 8:10 a.m. I'll be on KMBR 680 with Tom Tolbert at 5:30. So a couple hits going into the game. Then we'll be on the post game with Adam Copeland and John Lund and Dennis Brown. After the game, you'll also be able to catch me on YouTube. I'll do my YouTube post game show with Kev and the crew after the game as well. So busy day. And by the way, Chase, today at 4:00, my 14-year-old plays his first high school football game.
Oh, nice.
And so me and Kev and my other son Ben, we're gonna go out there and support our little guy.
What position?
He wears number 9. He's a receiver and a corner.
Freshman JV varsity.
He's freshman.
Okay.
And it's, they call it the Jamboree, I think, which they play so they're playing 4 teams tonight for like a quarter each against each team.
Cool.
It's like that kind of a thing. So
nice.
So we're going to do that. So that's going to be at around 4:00, 5:00. So I'll be watching my kid play football. Then I'm going to race home, watch the Niners and the Raiders, and get ready to chop it up and do tons in the post game. So
awesome.
Looking forward to it. I got to be honest. I'm excited to watch my kid play, but when it comes to football, Chase, I get nervous watching my boys play football. And so I've had this kind of electric buzz all day where I'm excited, but I'm also a little nervous. So
totally understandable.
Yeah, so it's going to be fun. Someday when you have a little guy and he's old enough to play football, and there's something about seeing, that sport and the danger factor, it's really cool. And I'm proud of him. And he's every day he comes home and he's like, Dad, look at my arm. Dad, look at my shoulder. Dad, look at and he's just bruised up and torn up and, but he loves it. He's having fun. And tonight's game number 1 for young Christopher.
If he loves it, I think you got to let it go, and I think football develops toughness. It develops problem solving. You are able to develop relationships. And
awesome.
I just think it's so valuable. Yeah.
Yeah. Mitchell Ness says Krug, the future Niner wide receiver. Harris, good luck, little Krug. Yeah, seriously. And Harry Balzac says, thanks, Larry Chase. Solid show. He says, guy Butthead says, what's your younger son's name, Larry? Larry? Freddie? No, it's not Freddie. Could you imagine if I'd go with Freddie? No, his name's Christopher.
Krueger.
His name is Christopher. I named him after my brother. All right, that's going to do it. Check out Chase in his channel. Chat Sports is blowing up. Kev did a breakdown the other day of all of the content creators, streamers, and let me just tell you where you sit in this thing, because you are.
Is this his power rankings?
No, he went through and looked at in the last 3 months how many views every channel's got and how many subs.
Oh, okay.
And your channel, 49er Chat, has 1.1 million views in the last 3 weeks or something.
Yeah.
And have added 2,000 subs.
Yeah.
The Krug show, by comparison, we have had 2.2 million views and added 1.6 thousand subs. So we got you on some views, but you got us on some subs. But heck, your channel, our channel, I looked at the list. Both channels doing exceptionally well.
Oh, yeah.
So thank you very much for joining me on this chat on Fridays. People love it. I love it. It's awesome to have you here. Have a great Friday, man. Enjoy the game. That's going to do it for us. Thanks to Chase. Thanks to all of you guys. Let's see. Thanks to Kev for setting all this up. Let me just check the comments. Thanks to Betr. That's right. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle. And that does it for us. Until next time, Chase, have a good week, man. We'll see you next week.
Too.
Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful. You